Before the by-elections were held, tensions swept across the nation. This was a very consequential by-election for both the UDA party, United Democratic Alliance, and the opposition. And so certain things happened prior to this particular election being done that you could say very clearly, even if we did not record it, then here the People's Mirror had an effect of shaping how this particular election was going to play out. Here the People's Mirror, we want to focus not on the elections, but on the last few hours prior to when these elections was being held in detail on what happened in certain key parts of the regions that had an effect of shaping how this election would turn out and eventually reshaped how this election turned out. But first, the People's Mirror is a fairly small channel, an affiliate channel of the Civic Lens KE. We are a reporting channel and a commentatorship channel of what goes on in the Kenyan political scene. We humbly request you that if this is your first engagement with us, please hit the subscribe button so that at least we can reach our challenge of the 1,000 subscribers mark before the week ends. Thank you. Now, I will selectively pick withdrawal of security as one of the issues that happened prior to that, arrests that were actually very arbitrarily that happened up to that, and allegations of foul play that we also witnessed before the elections were done. So let's start with security. You see, members of parliament, members of county assembly, members of the senate, and governors are entitled to certain level of government security. This issue of security is always contested. Other individuals feel like these professionals are not really professionals, but these government officials ought to be given security to feel more safe as they go through their day-to-day campaigns or their day-to-day interactions with the electorates. So the whole idea behind it is that when an elected official of the government is to meet an electorate, or a serving official of the government is to go and meet the people, certain times the people might behave in a way that causes the security of these individuals to be threatened. And so as a result, one of the package that a VIP enjoys in Kenya as part of being in the political class is the security that comes with it. Now, when this security are often withdrawn, the withdrawal sometimes is so strategic, and the withdrawal sometimes is done in a political manner. And so this has had talks going on why withdraw security for political reasons when it's needed the most. It's what the ruling class has often done, using the position of the interior or CS interior to regulate who or what gets security when. And so in the previous government, we have seen Ruto security being withdrawn, while under the Uhuru Kenyatta government, we have seen previous people or previous leaders having their securities withdrawn. And sometimes other leaders have even felt that the security that the state gives you is not really security. If anything, it's surveillance. Instead of these officials protecting you, these officials always supply the information on your day-to-day activities to their superior, because it's security that you do not control. It's security that is given to you. Now, with that being said, you'd find that these VIPs sometimes have the government security and then they have their personal security. The government security sometimes just mans their premises, and their personal security, which are private security, are the people that they use for their day-to-day lives. So when you pull out the government security for someone that uses government security to man their premises, you leave their premises prone to attack. If you pull away government security from their own personal security, then you leave them very vulnerable to attack. So why would a CS interior withdraw security during a very heated campaign? It beats no logic, and the answer is this: to leave that particular candidate vulnerable for attack. And so 48 hours prior to these particular elections being done, there were some two loyal leaders who were actually very vocal. One of them is currently the majority whip in the Senate, Honorable Boni Khalwale, who is the senator of Kakamega County. Mr. Khalwale's security was withdrawn just 24 hours to the Malava by-elections. Remember, the by-elections of Malava were actually happening in Kakamega County. So the county where the by-elections were taking place had the senator security personnel withdrawn just a day to these elections. And so that has been taken to be a very convenient pull from CS Murkomen, even if he defended himself later on, and we will give him a benefit of doubt from the defense that he portrayed. Mr. Khalwale aside, comes Mr. Natembeya. Governor Natembeya was almost attacked in Kabuchai ward, in Chwele ward, Kabuchai constituency, 48 hours prior to this particular by-elections. And the people that were attacking this governor of Trans Nzoia were fully affiliated to the Ford Kenya party, which belongs to the Speaker of the National Assembly. The Speaker of the National Assembly is currently under an arrangement with the United Democratic Alliance party. So you could say that the influence of the Ford Kenya in this particular withdrawal, or rather in the attack that existed in Chwele Kabuchai, had some aspect of the UDA party being in it. And now Governor Natembeya, who has been loud against the UDA party, and Honorable Senator Boni Khalwale, who is a member of the UDA party and has been loud against the UDA party in this Malava by-election, 24 hours to the elections had their security detail withdrawn. The explanation that the CS for Interior is giving, CS Murkomen, is that the officers of this certain key officials and politicians who are actually involved, or according to Murkomen, were rather involved in illegal activities. But Kenyans have filtered through the nonsense and can see that the selective way of withdrawing security from officials that actually engaged in violence is only aimed towards the officials that support the united opposition and not government officials. And the backing for this fact is that sometimes within those 24 hours prior to the election, 6 buses carrying unknown persons with a known identity landed in Malava. And among these 6 buses, there was an individual, while they were actually asked their business in Malava or whatever they were doing there, they decided to bolt. So they ran away, the 6 buses and the occupants that had been brought allegedly to disrupt the election in Malava. And so as a result, the citizens had or laid their hand on just one of the goons and dealt with him very properly. And while now the goon had been thoroughly beaten and his business in Malava was questioned, he opened up and said they were sponsored by Stanley Livondo to actually become the goons in Malava to disrupt the elections in Malava and steal the votes of Seth Panyako. You see, this happened prior to the elections being held. This was a person that was answering to the mob because the buses had left him and the mob had had a hold of him. So it was very clear that there was involvement of other certain members of parliament who were actually being sent to by their ruling masters to actually coordinate goons in Malava to disrupt Panyako's elections. And up to that point, the IBC did nothing about it, laughably. Now, what happened later on is that the elections were actually disrupted. Panyako's house was actually stormed, attacked. People looked for him with machetes. He was arrested. His vehicles were vandalized. All these things happened. All these things happened in that particular by-election in Malava. And still the by-election went on and the government won. And so these actions of withdrawing the security of Natembeya and Boni Khalwale, yet there is no succinct evidence that they were actually directly involved in crime, yet maintaining the security of Stanley Livondo and the likes, yet there is succinct evidence that they were actually involved in crime, shows you how the government was actually in a move to have Malava go the government way. And so it was going to be done whether or not Ndakwa was fit, he was going to become the member of parliament. And so this systematic way of running elections prior to the D-Day and then fully relying on the announced results as if it is the sanctity of all elections really should not be a dubious way that Kenyans people, live beyond. Here the People's Mirror, it's our duty to actually filter through the nonsense and show you what's actually happening. And so if you're taking the Malava elections as primarily an election that has been done by the IBC and as it has been announced by the IBC, you need a clearer democratic lenses within your eyes to take a look at what was going on in Malava and actually feel that the withdrawal of security for Boni Khalwale and for Natembeya when they needed their security the most to intercept this particular area and campaign for their candidate, and the introduction of unknown people through buses, through one of them that was actually caught and testified that they had been sent from Lakisama in Nairobi by Honorable Livondo to actually disrupt the elections while you keep the security of such a gentleman, Livondo. And then you go ahead, disrupt Ndakwa as per the allegations that were made by the goon, attack his homestead, attack his hotel, put his family in hinge, arrest him on the election day, attack his vehicles and his campaigns. Yet he still comes closer with a gap of 1,300 votes. Malava was not a fair deal. And so the IBC might have consolidated or rather counted what was voted voted, because that is their mandate, and that they might have done very impartially and independently. But the actions that motivated people to come vote and motivated others not to come vote still play a major role on how this election was carried out. And therefore, moving forward, these particular actions of politicians prior to election needs to form a basis of, putting sanctions upon them when they win, or rather, barring their candidates from actually being in the seat if it's a do or die. Election needs to be an opportunity for the Kenyan people to choose who they want to lead them, and that is the constitutional premise of carrying out an election. It shouldn't be a do or die between the ruling class and the class that wants to rule, so that if the ruling class has resources, they do everything to maintain that win, and if the other team does not have those resources, then they are blocked from an opportunity to retaliate. Other than that, issues of security and arrests, which we have both tied with both being Panyakos and whatever happened in Malava. The people in Malava took it upon themselves to protect their votes, but even at that, you saw what still happened. So while security remained in private hands in Malava, the security of Natembeya and Honorable Boni Kalwale was withdrawn. Now, that is with arrests and security. Let's talk about allegations. And allegations, the first one that I think I would really put before the mirror, because we dealt with it as an insurance and we left it in abeyance because we knew we'd come back to it after the election was done, was the allegations that were heightened in Magarini ward. Now, in Magarini ward, it was in Magarini constituency rather, it was very, very clear that prior to these elections being held, there were already allegations of foul play from the government side. And the reason for this foul play, or rather whoever was being blamed for this foul play, was Governor Mungaro, the current governor of Kilifi, who, according to statements of the United Opposition, prior to this election being done, had a meeting with Abdallah, who is the vice commissioner under Ethekon. And so this conversation with Abdallah allegedly was to shift the presiding officers from the previous ones to the ones under the payroll of Mungaro. While I was recording it under the People's Mirror when the allegations came out prior to the elections, I put it as a caveat that what would happen in Magarini if the United Opposition won? Would they still go ahead and say that Mungaro's involvement gave them a win, or was this to act as insurance that if they did not win, at least there were already aspersions of allegations that had been laid around Magarini? Now that we are recording it on the eve of the day of the results coming out, and Magarini has gone to Kombe instead of Stanley Kenga Karisa of the United Opposition, then the insurance of the United Opposition could make sense. We do not know the depth of these particular allegations, and so we are not going to rally on these allegations whose depth we do not know. But something very clear is this: there were allegations prior to the elections being done that there was full play in Magarini. And so Magarini going the way it went could be the people of Magarini showed up vehemently to do away with Kenga Karisa, or the people of Magarini showed up vehemently to vote Kenga Karisa, but because they did not have control of whoever presided the votes went the way they did. And so, ladies and gentlemen, with Magarini, there were allegations of actually foul play prior to the elections being done, and it turns out the election went to the side where the allegations weighed. In Banisa also there were allegations of citizenship, and the citizenship allegation was that the candidate in Banisa constituency was not by law a Kenyan citizen, and even if he had any traces of Kenyan citizenship, the large of the bulk lied than the fact that he had dual citizenship between the Kenyan government and the British, which since Mr. Ali Hassan has denied, but the court proceedings are still going on to unearth whether or not he had the citizenship of this country. And with that also, the allegations place that this candidate who was facing court issues prior to the elections now is the MP of Banisa constituency. In Mbeere North, there were allegations of Mr. Mudende changing his name from Muriuki to Mudende because of the 446 to 643 million deal that ought to have constructed an oxygen plant, where his name was actually being mentioned as one of the accused persons under the EACC investigation. Now it turns out that the very individual that is still under probe through the EACC is now the member of parliament elect for Mbeere North. What this shows is that every allegation every security threat, and every arrest that occurred prior to this particular election was intended to deliver the win the way it did, and so it served its purpose. Security claims in Malava, arrests of Panyako, allegations of foul play and allegations of foreigner being in the ballot box still did not stop the IEBC to declare the wins the way they did, and so we appreciate the independence of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission the same way we banish, or rather we'd want to admonish the actions of individuals during this particular by-elections that were by far not legal, not lawful, and not impartial in the recently concluded by-elections. Keep it the People's Mirror for anything that comes out of these by-elections, and moving forward, post these by-elections to more political commentatorship and updates. We keep you updated as it happens here at the People's Mirror.